theater. And it was performing really well before release, based on reviews and early reviews and ratings, and on the Rotten Tomatoes. But um, as of right now, it's the Rotten Tomatoes score is 91% for critics and 83% for audience, which is pretty good. And a big win for the DCEU, especially because they value this so much. And out of the box
Sound.
office or anything else, Warner Brothers values this the most. So for them, I think this is a big win. And they, whether you like Rotten Tomatoes or not, that's a different question. But from a business perspective, I can tell you that Warner Brothers definitely see this as a big win.
Absolutely.
However, the movie kind of underperformed at the box office, even looking at the pandemic aspect of it and all the HBO Max day and day thing and all of that factors aside, it still kind of underperformed, just based on the quality of the movie. I think this movie deserved a little bit more. And it's not that divisive of a movie. And based on the audience score, I can see that 83% of the people liked it. So it's not really that divisive. And there's not much divisive elements in the movie as well. Sometimes it's an R-rated movie, and some people might
Hmm.
not like gore as much. So I can see that that's the only factor that some of them might not like. And also, some of the humor is very James Gunn, and that's not everyone's cup of tea.
Yeah.
So that's fine. But apart from that, I don't see anything divisive in this movie at all. So I don't know exactly why it kind of underperformed. Although there are reasons that kind of make sense, but it's not a sure shot, like the pandemic, and we said the HBO Max day and date thing, and the marketing kind of was not very representative of what the movie is. They kind of um I don't know how to say it, but I think most of the marketing kind of made it out to be this very fun, colorful,
Yeah.
poppy movie. But it's not
Hmm.
that. It's a very it has some serious moments. It has heart. It has some big action sequences. It has some really cool stuff that the
Yeah.
trailers I don't think portrayed that. And so yeah, that could be it. And there's other reasons as well. But yeah, overall, I think that the box office kind of was underwhelming. I wouldn't call it a failure or a flop in general, based on how the movie is doing other than box office, because as per Samba TV, which counts in certain devices, and based on that they declare what views some sample size has. And they did that for all the big releases in the past year. And so they basically said that 2.8 million people, 2.8 million US households actually watched the movie. So that's a pretty big number, and I think that's a big win for them as well. And even the trades reported that this is the second most watched HBO Max movie. Well, not HBO Max movie, but a movie that released also on HBO Max.
Yeah.
So yeah, and Maher also tweeted this in one thing, so I'll bring this up. Mortal Kombat had 3.8 million views, which is very shocking to me. And not just based on the quality, but based on how many people were interested in this thing in the first place. But yeah, the Suicide Squad was the second one. That's at 2.8. I think the third one is Wonder Woman 84. I'm not sure what exactly the number was. I forgot. But Zack Snyder's Justice League in comparison was 2.3 million views. So yeah, the this movie is the second most viewed on HBO Max. They got the HBO Max results they wanted. They got the Rotten Tomatoes they wanted. So it only underperformed at the box office. So I think WB will just let it slide, and it's James Gunn, so I'm 100% sure he's gonna make something else as well.
Yeah.
Now, what do you guys think are the factors that kind of, resulted in this underwhelming box office?
I think it definitely is due to the marketing. Because the marketing campaign for this movie is shitty, and it's not just this that was a result of a bad marketing campaign in terms of DC films. Shazam had a bad marketing campaign. Birds of Prey had a bad marketing campaign. I feel like of the DCEU, the only film that didn't have a bad marketing campaign was Aquaman, which is why, tie that with the fact that also came out on Christmas weekend, was the fact that it made $1 billion. Because all the ads that you saw for Suicide Squad, apart from the Rebellion PG-13 trailer, was them just basically saying, "Get ready for the wackalicious film of the summer."
Yeah,
it's true. That was the vibe I got from it, and they really just were not going all out with the marketing until the last few weeks. I remember, like, I was vacationing in LA about a month ago, and I was driving up Sunset Boulevard, and I'm seeing nothing but just like Suicide Squad posters, like literally everywhere. They put it on the benches, they put it on the buildings. Like, they were going nuts with the marketing in the last few weeks, and it was, to me, it felt like they didn't really see it as that big of a deal until it was too late. Because I feel like if they knew it was a big of a deal, they would have marketed it in a much better way, the same way they marketed like Dune. You know what I mean? Where you saw the first trailer for Dune, they really made it look like it was a big deal. But with something like this, they didn't make it really look like it was a big deal. They just made it look like it was just a silly, fun, wacky action film, which isn't what it's supposed to be. So that's what I feel like was what killed it ultimately. Aside from, the obvious stuff like the fact that, your HBO Max, day and day release, and the fact that, there are still places in the world that haven't fully opened up their movie theaters yet.
Comparing to even the Suicide Squad trailers, like the first movie, those trailers were amazing, even though there were so many tonal changes in the trailers itself and all that stuff. But the hype surrounding those trailers and the DCU at that time was on another level. It's not even close.
Yeah, dude, that was like prime time DCEU. I think this movie, like, the reason I feel like, obviously, like, the marketing has been kind of bad, and as you said, like Dune, I feel like Dune was an event. Like, that felt like, when you watch that trailer, it does feel like an event kind of thing that's happening. But this one, it did feel like, oh, it's just a movie. Also, I feel like marketing should have been more online, especially because everyone was at home, right? And I feel like the biggest reason, which is the pandemic, but because of the pandemic, right now, I can tell you that here in the UK, at the very least, there's a lot more kids outside rather than adults. And the fact that this movie is an 18, and I don't feel like it needs to be an 18. Like, you can still do everything in here, besides the faces exploding and all that kind of stuff. But I feel like this could be
I don't think Gunn would do this movie if this was an R.
I mean, here in the UK, we're pretty easy with the ratings. I mean, what would be considered an 18 in the US is a 15 here. So we're a bit more grown up, I guess, in that sense. But it's
a lot more fun.
We're more crazy.
You guys are a lot more fun than us.
Yeah, wacky. It's true. Evidently by our history, but with the UK, I mean, I feel like they should have. In general, they should have made this movie a bit. This feels like what they did with Birds of Prey. Birds of Prey, especially that movie, had no reason to be an 18 and anything to do with that. Because if they made that film, that was one of the biggest reasons it flopped. I feel like if they made that into a normal 13 or a 15, that movie could have made, at the very least, another 200 million. Because especially a good portion of people that want to watch comic book movies are kids. Well, I say kids, but like, the younger teens. And that's what it should have been. They should have opened this movie up to them a bit more. Hell, maybe they can even go down the route of what they did with Deadpool 2, of making it a bit more PG in a different cut or something. Maybe they can cut out those scenes of people's faces and heads getting blown off. But I feel like that was the biggest reason, in my opinion. The fact that it's the pandemic, mixed in with the side effects of older people not going out that much. Yeah, I mean, I have people telling me to not go to the cinemas because I mean, like, I don't know, I'm just like, no, I don't want to just sit at home and watch films because it's just not the same experience. And the fact that older people feel this way, like, I can tell you, my parents will know. Well, they don't go to cinema anyway, but taking them out today in this climate, they're never gonna go. So they should have opened this film up to young people. Absolutely.
Yeah, and also I think one more thing I forgot to mention was the first movie had it made a lot of money in the box office, right? So like I said, there was hype, there was all of that, but there was also Batman in it, there was Joker, and there was Will Smith's Deadshot, one of the biggest, I think, the reasons that movie performed so well, and he was, obviously he was one of the highlights of that movie. So immediately dropping Will Smith is a big risk and big mistake. So I don't know what exactly the reasons were for that. Maybe Will Smith wasn't interested anymore in this shit. Maybe he actually had scheduling conflicts. Whatever the reason is,
I think that was a big mistake. Conflicts before, but I'm not like that. Was just what someone.
I mean, they always said that. They always say that. So
yeah.
We don't know.
It probably was contractual. Hell, for all you know, I mean, Deadshot's character could have been swapped out.
Yeah.
Because I forget the character's name, but they could have just easily switched them out because they both have a daughter. They're both, black characters, and they're both very similar with the guns and stuff. So
Yeah, I also
and also I think also they were kind of capitalizing on the fact that on the first Suicide Squad was the first time you actually got to see Harley Quinn in a movie, which everybody had wanted to see Harley Quinn in these movies for a long time. Whereas now it's Margot's third round is Harley Quinn, and so you kind of have that feeling that what else? What other new things can you offer us this time around? You know what I mean?
Yeah. And Birds of Prey wasn't a big success as well, and there's some bad taste from that. There's some bad taste from Suicide Squad. That could also be a factor. And also, the Will Smith thing, I think it's interesting to point out also that the Bloodsport character was actually supposed to be a recast of Deadshot at one point, apparently. And then in the script, he was written as Vigilante. And, he only became Bloodsport once they started filming. And, there was also at one point talk of not having that character at all and, just having Deathstroke in there, Joe Manganiello's Deathstroke. So that's also very interesting. And I think that, there were some compromises that James Gunn had to make before starting filming. During the script phase and pre-production. So, that's very interesting, and I think that Will Smith is definitely a big factor also in not bringing people to to watch the movie.
I think you're absolutely right about the casting because I mean I like Idris Elba. I think he's such a great guy, and he's also a Brit, so I love him even more. Obviously, you still have people like Margot Robbie, but the rest of the cast are very unknown. Most of the people they killed off in the beginning, I know all of them. Actually, no, I know like most of them, but most of them aren't like big actors. Like Peter Capaldi, he's not going to be known outside of Doctor Who, right?
Yeah.
Nathan Fillion, he does TV. He's not that big. There's a lot of people in there that aren't big characters. None of them can compare to someone like Will Smith. Will Smith is as big as it gets, And then you have people like with cameos in the 2016 Suicide Squad with Ben Affleck, you had The Flash, and it also felt, and obviously because this whole thing of Universal, the DCEU has collapsed essentially, right? So we don't have that, it's connected anymore. So there's no incentive to go back to watching a film because it all just feels like one-offs, but they're not one-offs. It's all a big mess, in my opinion. I think if there were people like, Deadshot and all of these huge characters and actors combined together, I feel like it could have been good. But it really is a multiple. it's not one thing. You can't just look at one thing and say it's
Yeah.
this, because I can say, hey, pandemic this, pandemic that, but if it just circumstances. If James Gunn had said, look, I want to make a movie where I want these actors in it, I want these characters in it, it could have been a completely different scenario. But yeah, I think so. Multiple things. So pandemic, terrible marketing, actors, and the story, and yeah.
I mean, pandemic excluded, the trailers weren't also doing very well. So the interest in this movie already was taking a hit, even
Yeah.
before release.
And I do want to say that even though it's pandemic, this is still very low in my opinion. Like this, because there are other things that have come out that have done better than this, and so it's not just pandemic, obviously. So
Yeah.
I think it's interesting to see where, like, I think this is gonna be an interesting litmus test for really studios going forward. You see, there's early numbers for Free Guy, which I saw and I liked it a lot. But that's getting, I mean, it's PG-13, but it's getting 25, around maybe a little less than Suicide Squad numbers, but obviously, but there's other movies like Black Widow made a lot of money. That's Marvel. I feel like that's always gonna mint money, but also it was on Disney Plus, so there's so many factors going on. I think this is gonna be. I think studios don't. This is like new territory for studios. I think it's gonna be interesting for them to try to figure out where to go, how to market things now. We got HBO Max movies, got Disney Plus movies. Like Paramount Plus is starting to do like 30 days after release. It's on Paramount Plus. It's wild territory with streaming, and so I definitely don't think this is they think that like they're invested in James Gunn. I think after Guardians 3, he's gonna be done with Marvel. He wants to get back into like Peacemaker, like however we feel about the character. That's gonna be an interesting show. It's gonna be violent. It's gonna be wild. Like, so I feel like
I will say I have an interest in that.
Yeah, like I think me too. Like I'm
Yeah,
the
me too.
character. Love to hate him. He's a bastard, but like it's gonna be interesting, like the tone that they're gonna do. So I'm curious if he's gonna do another movie after Peacemaker or if anything. So we'll see it. But I think there obviously all these factors. It's not runaway success. Like we're never gonna we'll never say that. But at the same time, I think it's not like they're gonna cut James Gunn loose. They're gonna be like, okay, we're done. That was a failure. You're out. Like, so I think I'm interested to see what every studio does, really. I think we're seeing like we're in the middle of the pandemic, but post pandemic, what theater is going to look like, what streaming is going to look like. So it's worrying, but I'm hoping theaters stay open and stay safe. So it's a weird territory.
Yeah.